Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this time together. My name is Brad, and I am the State Director for Spiritual Care for Florida Baptist Disaster Relief. Thank you so much for being a part of this training. I'm so happy that we can do it this way to give you opportunities to learn more about spiritual care, to learn more about what it means to become a chaplain. And so we have two goals for this time together. One is to introduce to you what are the roles of a spiritual care volunteer. Secondly, we'll look at how to become a chaplain and what does a chaplain do. And so I've got a PowerPoint that's going to help us kind of walk through this. Along the lines, if you have any questions, you can let me know or email Disaster Relief, and we can help you find the answers to those questions. And so thank you again for being a part of this and taking this first step to working with disaster relief and spiritual care. So what I'm going to do is share my screen here. Once I click on the right button, I apologize. And now I'm going to share my screen. Sorry about that. So let's just kind of walk through this together. What is a spiritual care volunteer versus a disaster relief chaplain? So here's the deal. We have basically two different paths that you can take in the spiritual care world with disaster relief. So the spiritual care volunteer, what they do is they serve alongside of cleanup recovery units, is what it has there, or feeding units, or any of the units that we have, the other disciplines. So their primary role is to serve as a chainsaw runner or as a cleanup recovery person or whatever. And their job is to focus on the spiritual care aspects of that team. See, what happens is, as disaster relief workers, we're really good at doing jobs. We're really good at accomplishing tasks and getting things done, which is critically important. But what happens is oftentimes we get so focused on that we forget about the spiritual nature of what we're doing. See, we're not just doing a job. We're not just feeding people. We're not just doing cleanup recovery. We're not just doing childcare. We're not just admin workers. We're people who are sharing the love of Jesus. And so what the spiritual care volunteer is, it's a person who serves within those teams, within the cleanup recovery team or within the other disciplines. And their role is to be the spiritual leader of that group. And so there may be 3 or 4 of these in a unit, and each day a different person puts on the spiritual care mantle and job description. And so when they arrive to a site, the spiritual care volunteer who's embedded in like a cleanup recovery team, what they'll do is the team will get started, and the spiritual care volunteer will focus on the relationships with the homeowner, the survivors in the community, the kids at the house. They'll focus on building those relationships, not just with the community, but also with the team. Because oftentimes what happens is we get so focused on fixing a task that we kind of miss the spiritual needs of those within our units. And so the spiritual care volunteer focuses on those things. They become the barometer for the team around them. An effective spiritual care volunteer who is serving on different units will help that unit become more focused on not just completing the job, but making sure we're doing so by honoring Christ and not losing focus on the main thing, which is sharing the love of Jesus with people who need help. And so that's what the spiritual care volunteer does. Their whole world is focused on those units and those around them and sharing Jesus in such a way that it changes the environment from being task-oriented to being spiritually focused, at least spiritually aware. And very critical that we have, every team that we have needs to have somebody who is being that spiritual care person who's making sure that we're focused on those needs. And so critical that we have many of those people out there who are trained and willing to serve. The other pathway we have is our DR chaplains. DR chaplains are spiritual care volunteers who have more training. They've gone the next step. And so a DR chaplain works with other chaplains at the incident command to serve wherever the need is. A spiritual care volunteer is usually embedded in a unit, whereas a DR chaplain is the unit. And so they usually go off a little bit more by themselves. They're a lot more independent. They work with other chaplains to serve not just individual sites, but also the whole community or the whole call out. It's also important to remember that the chaplain, by the very nature of them being the chaplain, becomes the presence of hope during a response. When a chaplain walks up and they're wearing a chaplain's hat or a chaplain's badge or a chaplain's shirt, people realize that. They take notice of that. And their physical presence raises the hope level of that situation. I've seen it time and time again where just a simple presence of a chaplain provides focus and clarity and helps people who are dealing with things, who are struggling or not doing well. Just the simple presence of a chaplain makes all the difference in the world. If you go through chaplain training, you're going to hear about the ministry of presence. No, this isn't a Christmas gift or a present to a friend. The ministry of presence is you being physically present, and how people see chaplains as the presence of hope. And so it's a critical role that the chaplains get to play. And I think it's important to remember that chaplains can be anybody. I mean, they need to be followers of Christ, but they can really be anybody. It's easy to think that your church staff or your senior pastor, those are chaplains. In fact, I found that, and this is coming from somebody who serves on church staff in a pastoral type role, pastors are not always the best chaplains. And here's why. Pastors like to talk. That's just the way we're wired. We're talkers. The best chaplains are often listeners. And because of their listening ability, they can share the love of Christ in a much different way. And so chaplains are more independent. They have a little more flexibility, and then the presence of hope. It also takes a lot of training to achieve the threshold of chaplain. Whereas after this course, if you took this course, you are more than qualified to be a spiritual care volunteer. But if you would like to become a chaplain, there's a lot more involved with that. And so the differences there, I hope, are very clear. We need spiritual care volunteers. We need a bunch of spiritual care volunteers. Every unit needs a spiritual care point person. We also need chaplains who are looking at not just the individual units, but the entire call out and making sure that there's hope, making sure that people are being cared for, and that the love of Christ is not forgotten at all through a call out. So let's talk about what the attitude of a chaplain should be. Chaplains need to be known as humble servants. There's no task too small for a chaplain. They need to be doing whatever it takes to raise morale, to raise the spiritual barometer of the call out. They need to be humble servants. They need to be self-starters. One thing that's important to remember is, as a chaplain, you are the unit. When a chaplain comes on site, they're not like a cleanup recovery unit. They are the unit. And so as a cleanup recovery unit will go out and work on a house, a chaplain is a little bit different. They may not be assigned to different places. Chaplains need to be self-starters. They need to be looking for opportunities to serve. They may go out and say, talk to admin and say, hey, I'm going to visit every work site today, and I'm going to go just check in. They may be looking for other opportunities to serve with our partner organizations like the Red Cross or Salvation Army. They may go to the sheriff's department and just say, hey, I'm a chaplain. I'm just coming to check on you guys and see how you're doing. Chaplains need to be self-starters because they're not necessarily going to go fix the house. they're looking at things totally differently. So they need to be self-starters. They also need to be self-managers, because as a chaplain, one of the things that we do is we looked at the stress level of our site. We look for people who are in the yellow or the red, who are a little more stressed than they need to be, are potentially causing difficulty or harm to themselves. So as a chaplain, we need to make sure that we're taking care of our own selves, and that if you have another chaplain there on site with you, that you are both keeping each other either in check, and that you're looking out for each other, because that's what we do. We help other people, and oftentimes we forget about ourselves. And so make sure that you're taking care of yourself, that you're getting the rest you need, and that you're taking care of your own personal self, because no one else may be looking out for you. And so just remember that you need to be a self-manager. You need to manage your sleep, that you're eating, and you just have to take care of yourself. And lastly, it's very important as a chaplain to remember that you're seen as a leader on the site. Excuse me. You're seen as the leader. People are going to ask you questions because they think you know the answers. And so you don't have to know all the answers. But remember that your physical presence there is seen as a person of leadership. So we need to conduct ourselves in such a way that when people see us, they see us as a leader. Your physical presence will raise morale, and people will be excited to see you. When you go onto a work site and somebody from the community comes up and asks you a question, they're going to think that you know the answers because you're wearing that chaplain's badge. Chaplains are seen as leaders. So make sure that you're conducting yourself in such a way. Don't feel the pressure of having to know all the answers, because there's no way that you can know all the answers. However, you need to know how to find the answers. And then also, whenever you find the answer, deliver the answer back to the person who asked the question. And so people will judge their experience serving with disaster relief based off the leadership at the site. As a chaplain, people are going to see you as a leader. You may not be serving in that role. You may be working with other chaplains, but your physical chaplain badge, your badge, will make people think that you're a leader. So make sure you're conducting yourself as one. Excuse me. Next, we're going to talk about the commitment of a chaplain. The chaplain models for the call out what it means to love people. You're going to be tired. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be worn out. Maybe not physically as much as you will be emotionally and spiritually, because you're going to be showing the love of Christ nonstop, because that's what we do. We show the love of Christ. And so be ready to model that. And here's the deal. If you're stressed, if you're unable to do that, given the current situation or where you're at, it's okay to step out and swap with somebody else. Let me know, let admin know what your needs are. Because remember, your presence reflects the love of Jesus. Also, you need to work with admin to follow up on new believers. We've talked about this before in previous sessions, and it would be great if we got to be the ones who sealed the deal for anybody who wants to become a follower of Christ. That would be exciting, to be the ones who get to back clean up. But the reality is that is not our calling. As chaplains, our calling is not to make sure that every person becomes a follower of Christ. Please hear the difference here. Becomes. Our goal as chaplains is to take somebody who is focusing on their difficulty and redirect that their focus back to something else. Ideally, in our situations, Jesus. And so our goal, our job is to turn them to a different direction. And God so often gives us opportunities to be those who are able to help a person accept Christ as the Lord of their lives. And that's exciting. And we love it when that happens. And when that happens, we need to have the opportunity, the ability to say, person who just accepted Jesus, here is your next step. This is the church that will follow up with you and help you become discipled. As chaplains, we don't necessarily have the ability to disciple. We have the ability to provide spiritual first aid and to redirect them back to Jesus. and and so we need to make sure that we are able to connect them with somebody who can disciple. Now, in some situations, we don't have the ability to do that. We can't say, here's a church that would love to get to know you, because in some cases, there's no churches left. In some cases, the staff has all had to disperse because their homes are destroyed or their church is destroyed. So if there's no church to send new believers to, or people who have questions to, then you need to work with admin to figure out a plan to help people who are looking for the next step besides your engagement, your spiritual first aid, that can guide them down the path of knowing more about Jesus. So one of the things that we as chaplains do is work with admin to help set up that process. So let's talk about the commitment of chaplain and what to bring to the site. Now, please understand, this is not an exhaustive list by any stretch, by any imagination. This is just some things that you'll need to make sure you have. On the left-hand side there, it says waterproof work shoes and gloves. Let me explain. I was on a site once, and I was able to take somebody who had been out of their home and help them get into their home, help them see their home for the first time following a storm. It had been about a month since they had been inside their home. There's been no power. There was no no one cleaned out the trash. No one cleaned out the fridge. And if you understand what that means, it was gross. The fridge, the freezers, the smells, it was really, really bad. But they needed to get into their home to get some things out. And it was a very emotional thing for them. So I helped this person walk through their house. The clothes I was wearing into that room, I did not take home with me because they smelled so bad. My shoes were nasty. My gloves, praise God, I had gloves on because it was really, really gross. So I say that. Bring more than one pair of shoes. Bring shoes that you don't mind throwing away. Excuse me. Wear gloves. Bring multiple pairs of gloves, because you're going to be involved. This is not necessarily a clean ministry. Oftentimes it is, but sometimes you get down in the dirt, and that's okay. Bring rain gear. Bring insect repellent. There's no mosquitoes after post-hurricane mosquitoes. Once they come back, they are back, and they're big. Bring sunscreen. Bring a good flashlight. Bring your cot, air mattress, and make sure you have your uniform. And if you have a black hat, bring a black hat, the black chaplain's hat. Make sure you have your chaplain's badge, your chaplain's shirts. Make sure it's easy to identify you as a chaplain. Bring all those things with you. Now, for a chaplain, that was for everybody. Now, if you're a chaplain, here's some things that you may want to consider as well. So on your smartphone, you have the ability to download maps of where you're going. Both Google and Waze allow you to do that. The reason this is critical is what we experienced in a hurricane just a while ago. There was no cell coverage anywhere, no data coverage anywhere. So if you pulled out your phone and were trying to navigate to a location as a chaplain, you would never find it because your phone couldn't connect to the network. So it's important that you download the offline versions of the maps to where you're going. It's a very easy process to do, but I would certainly consider doing that. Because remember, as a chaplain, you are the unit. You are the one who's going to go out, and that's why it's so critical for chaplains to have cars, so that way you can adequately guide people to where they need to be. Or if none of that works, go get you an old school book and get one of those for the area. So that a map book, so that way you get around. So remember, you're going to be potentially not just at the site, but anywhere within the area serving, however God allows you to serve. Some other things to bring. The Here's Hope tracks. That's one of the things that we try to have on site. These are gospel tracks that help explain the plan of salvation. They're great stuff. But here's the thing. We may not have any there. We'll try our best to have some there, but we may run out. So you may want to bring your own tracks. Things like Bibles. We do our best. We often have times have pallets of Bibles at the warehouse that we try to bring out to sites. That doesn't always happen. And so make sure that you have extra Bibles that you can give away. A call out is not the time to bring your family Bible, your heirloom Bible, your precious Bible, whatever that Bible is. This is when you want to go buy a cheaper hardback, a cheaper paperback to bring with you, so that way you can give those away. Another important thing is make sure you have a power pack for your phone. Those little battery packs that you can buy to charge your phone, because oftentimes the case is there's no power at the site. And if you're going to use your phone as a GPS, then you got to make sure you have a way to charge it. Bring breath mints. I'm not saying your breath could stand in the way of somebody knowing Jesus, but I don't want to risk it. So make sure you have good breath. Make sure you have things like candy to give to kids and things to help knock down some of those walls that are going to be out there as you do your best to engage with people. Now, please hear me. This is in no way an exhaustive list. This is just some things to get your mind rolling. And what you'll learn is after your first call out, you'll figure out what you need to bring. And so here's some ideas of things to bring with you. So we've mentioned this already to a point, but as a chaplain, you're a little bit different than your cleanup recovery units, than your feeding units. You kind of set your own battle rhythm. You kind of figure out what the needs are within the site, within the call out, and you meet those needs. So you'll work with incident command to figure out what are the critical areas of need within the site. You may have a chance to meet Red Cross or one of our other partners like the Salvation Army. And I encourage you to go meet with their leadership and say, I'm available. It is not unheard of for one Red Cross site leader to say, hey, can you go out with the herbs? There may be another Red Cross site leader who says, hey, we don't want anything to do with you, so leave us alone. And so make sure you're putting yourself out there to be used by the Red Cross with the herbs or with a shelter or whatever is available. Find a way to get involved in their ministry if you can. Make sure that you get to know the cleanup and recovery coordinator for the site, because there's going to be needs within cleanup and recovery, and you may go out with those teams or you may visit certain teams based off what the cleanup and recovery coordinator says is needed. So you'll work with them. You may also work with assessors. Assessors are one of the most critical ministries because it is our first impression. Assessors go out and they assess, they look at houses. And the best partnership we have, I believe, as chaplains is with assessors, because they're the first contact. And so as they're assessing, we can love on the homeowners and start talking about Jesus in a way that, well, it's just neat to see how God uses those. So you may work with assessors. I say all this to say that, going back to something we said a little bit ago, you need to be a self-starter. There's not necessarily going to be a battle rhythm for you. There will be for the site, and you need to follow that site battle rhythm. But for you, you need to figure out what the needs are that day within the site to serve. It may be staying with the incident commander and just hanging out with him or her and making sure that they're doing okay. And maybe the same thing with feeding. You may just hang out and talk to people who are cooking or those who are eating. Figure out where the need is and serve that way. Now, the next one's very critical. Excuse me. It's how to become a chaplain. Please understand, if you're not interested in becoming a chaplain, that's okay. We need spiritual care volunteers. We need as many as we can. But if you would like to become a endorsed chaplain, there's several steps. And we'll walk through all these. And sometimes these change a little bit, but this is this is generally speaking the steps that are necessary. First thing you have to do is you have to apply to be a chaplain. And you can do that on the Florida Baptist Disaster Relief Training page. You can apply to be a chaplain. And then you have to take a course called the Basic DR Chaplaincy course. That is not this course. This is just an introduction to spiritual care and chaplains, just kind of a general overview. The Basic DR Chaplain course is a multi-hour exhaustive course, which will kind of walk you through what it means to be a DR chaplain. And then you'll take a course called Basics or Operational Stress First Aid or Critical Incident Stress Management, or CISM. These are two very, very exhaustive courses. Stress First Aid is about 12 hours. CISM is very similar. And you may have already taken those courses previously. If you can give me your certificate of completion for those courses, then that qualifies. But you'll need to make sure if you've taken Stress First Aid or CISM. The other thing you need to do is submit it says background checks. Actually, what I need is references. I need 2 references, one from your senior pastor of the church you serve, if you are a senior pastor, from your area missionary, and then somebody else who has seen you serve in ministry. So we need 2 references that can be emailed to me or to admin about how you served in the past. Finally, to become a chaplain, you need to have some experience. And this could be ministry experience. So if you're a pastor, you kind of got this qualification already done. If you work as a corporate chaplain or somebody who runs a ministry within the church, then you may already qualify for this experience. But if you don't, you need at least 6 months of ministry experience, or you need to serve alongside of another chaplain during a call-out situation. So there's a 6-month experience need that you'll have to satisfy. After you complete all those steps, and you've done things like your background check and some of the other general steps for disaster relief, we'll then send you your endorsement and your badge and things like that will help identify you as a chaplain. And so that is the steps. Those are always subject to change, but that's the basics. So that's it. That's how you become a chaplain. Guys, listen, I know that was a lot of information. And so if you have any questions, email me, email Disaster Relief. Let us know what questions you have and how we can answer anything that may come up. We would love to have you serve in whatever you find is the place where God wants you to engage with. And so if it's chaplains, great. If it's someplace else, that's fine too. The most important thing is that you find your place to plug in and do so and honor God through that commitment. Thank you so much for all you out there who have been part of this time. And if you have any questions as you go through the process of training, let us know. You can find my information on the Disaster Relief Leadership website, or you can email the Disaster Relief admin team who can help you with any other questions that you may have. God bless you. Thank you for spending this time with me, and just look forward to seeing how God uses you and this ministry to continue to honor, to provide just the opportunity to honor Christ through his church. God bless, and thank you so much.